she's there, you know, she's there for a reason. Maybe whether it's demonic or maybe it's something, something good. But I remember as I got older, you know, going to recent events, I remember having a dream, and I was back in high school. For some reason, I just kept running. We're in the cafeteria, and I was running into people that I knew from back in high school, and each one of them was coming up to me, and they're putting, what is it, a clothespin?
Clothespin.
They're putting a clothespin into my arm, one at a time from the top to the bottom towards my wrist, and then the last one who put it in was an old lady, but she kind of had like a Mother Mary thing on her head. I don't know what it's called, but she was wearing that. And then as soon as she put it in, my dream shot to another dream where I was like in some apartments upstairs. All three of my kids are a little bit older at the time already, so they had a sense of knowledge of what was going on. And this old lady kept running up to my door and banging on it, and like, trying to come in, and this is while I'm asleep. This is a dream that I'm having. So she's trying to come in, and I remember fighting, trying to hold the door shut because she was so strong. And then she tried to stick her finger in the keyhole, and I'm thinking, like it's a finger, it's gonna break. And it started the key part on my side started moving like she got a key in there, but I know it's not a key, it's her finger. Like she jammed it in there, so it's like, okay, this lady's on some other stuff. She's crazy. And then she was banging on the door, and then, I'm yelling like, stop, stop. And then she gets quiet. She walks away. My kids are in the living room settling down, and she comes running back and banging on the door. And then she changes her voice. Her voice turned into my voice. She sounded just like me telling my kids, like, hey, it's daddy, open the door. Everything's going to be all right. Just come open the door. And then right there, I started flipping out because I'm like, okay, what's going on? What is this? And then, put my hands on both sides of the door, and I just yelled really loud, ah! And at that time, my wife woke me up to me, screaming in real life, and I broke down, like what was going on.
And I can sense it in your tone and your voice that you're getting louder. Does she freak you out right now? Thinking about it? Thinking about her.
I mean, right now, no, because, we're just talking about it. But, I mean, eventually I might hear from her again, whatever she is, whoever she is. But I know it comes maybe like once or twice a year.
And this is the same woman that you see since childhood throughout. She hasn't changed. Everything looks the same still. She looks the same. You said she wore a raggedy, like, white dress, and her face, you couldn't see her face.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't see her face. She had like I want to say like dreadlocks, but her hair was super long, and it was like so matted up, like wild.
Okay. Um, have you ever, would you consider, if you haven't, trying to communicate with her? I know that might be kind of hard if you're sleeping, but have you tried considering it in, like, while you're awake in the evening to kind of see what this is or what she's about, what she wants?
I've actually thought about it, and there's something you could actually look into, for people who are going through this or have had an experience, but can't, like remember, to the full extent everything. Hypnotic
So
regression.
I end up in that train. And from that train, I'm in another place. It's no longer here. It's a And I remember being in this library, and I was thinking, well, how far can I go? What's my next level? And so I remember climbing. The libraries, not the new ones they got now, but like the old ones, the ones that are so tall. I mean, I'm not like,
with the ladders.
yeah, yes, exactly. They have those ladders that you have to climb, and the library is like, when you see it goes up so far. And I remember climbing that ladder, and it's not like it took long to get up there. It's like I got on that ladder and I was just boom, shot up right to the next level. And then the next place was not that library no more. It was a whole nother place, and it was like this building with these doors that were like, it was like the advancement of these doors was something we've never seen here. So, I was able to go through them and, fly up into the next spot. Until I did this, that whole time I did this until I reached a different, I always challenge myself, like, go to the next, how far can you go? How far can you go? Right. So I did this until I finally got to this place that was different realms that I went through to get to this final destination, so to speak. And I remember the floor, the street, those rocks that are like on the streets, they're cobblestones. I guess you would call them cobblestone roads. I remember being there, and I remember thinking, wow, what is this place? It was so immaculate looking that it didn't look nothing like I'd ever seen in real life here on this earth, spotless. You got two men that I see. Again, none of these people that I've seen while traveling, there's no nose, no mouth. Like, I can't describe to you what they look like, other than I knew the two men there, and they were all in white, and they were like street sweepers, and I'm thinking, what are they doing? Like, there's nothing to clean here. It's just so clean. And I see this building off to my right side. And the only way I can describe it is apartments, but not apartment complexes like what you see in Southwest Houston or, any rich neighborhood. It just was a building with doors in it. And it reminded me, okay, this has to be like an apartment complex. Like, who lives here? And I remember seeing this red door that just stood out. And I'm thinking, I want to go through that door because I want to go further and see what's there. Like, where can I get to? And all of a sudden, my father, and keep in mind, he had already passed already, a while back. But my father, who didn't really look like my father, but I knew he was my father. He just looked different, and he was telling me I couldn't be here.
Different, like how? Like he was younger? Or I know a lot of people say whenever they see a family member that's passed in their dream or something like that, it's usually like in a younger form.
No, it wasn't in a younger form. He was still in the same, how I pictured him, how I see him, how I'm seeing him now, in that scenario when I went up there to travel. He was still that age that he was. He wasn't younger or older. But what I mean different is that his features were kind of off. He had like dark under around his eyes. It's not like I could see the whites in his eyes like I could see your eyes, right? I see your pupils, I see your eyes, like I see the color of your skin. I couldn't see no color of skin on him. And he told me that I can't be here. He said, you can't be here. But he didn't tell me in words. We communicated like I knew what he was saying.
You specify that?
The first encounter was just me sitting in my room one time and playing the game, like I said, and it darted across the room, and then it did it again. And it did it about 4 or 5 times. And then at one point, I was kind of just staring at the one spot on the wall, and it looked like it was gonna come running across again, and it just stopped. And that's when the shadow grew, and it became like an actual blob. And I was just staring at it. I was scared. I was scared. I was just standing there watching this thing form on my wall, and I had no idea what to do. I didn't know whether to scream. I didn't know whether to burn the house down and run, or.
Yeah.
But it was a scary thing for me, just watching this blob just grow on my wall.
And did do you have any siblings or anybody else that was there in the house with you that are you the only person who was experiencing this?
I was the only one who experienced this. My sister, on the other hand, she grew up with watching our cousins that passed away. She grew up with his ghost,
Oh, really?
so she dealt with the ghost in the house, and I ended up with the shadow person.
Okay. And you said your cousin's ghost?
Yes, I have. At the time, he was 3 years old, I believe. He was murdered by his mom's ex boyfriend.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
So
And you don't think maybe that could have maybe tied in with this shadow person? Maybe it was also y'all's cousin?
I believe me, I've thought of it as to that point, but I don't think so, because I feel like it felt like this energy of the shadow person was an older person. It felt like it was uh one of the older people. As it could have been a ghost from a different part of history, because the house that I lived in, the apartment, is over 100 years old, and the apartment that I lived in used to be a funeral home
Okay.
before it was converted into an actual apartment building.
And I know in the notes we had gone over before we started this interview. You had said that the funeral the home was a funeral home, I believe, for the children that they had passed away.
In the textile mills, yes.
Yes.
Besides the kids passing away from the textile mills, it also used to be for the work. It used to be a lot of the workers in those mills. Because where I lived was far enough away for the media at the time. I guess back then, well, where the media wasn't as close to the textile mills, so people couldn't go back and forth running across, like, oh, asking questions like, oh, so and so passed away in your mill, and then they would run back to the funeral home and all that.
And these were kids that passed away in the mill.
Yeah, it was a bunch of heavy equipment machinery, and you had these little kids running around, 7, 8, 9 years old, just running around because it was easy for them to fit behind the equipment and do all this other little labor tasks.
Yeah. Did I know you said that this shadow person eventually physically came at you, or what happened with that?
So there was one time I was on the phone with a friend, and I'm just chilling in the house. I'm on the phone with a friend. Yeah, it's super late, and all of a sudden, you know, my lights start flickering a little bit. I'm not paying much mind to it, and as soon as I like put my head on my pillow, my lights went out, and my body just felt completely like pinned down.
My stepbrother, his three brothers, and Melanie, his wife's two daughters. So we're just hanging out, watching TV, and one of my stepbrother's brothers came in and said, "We see this little girl in the closet rocking back and forth, like, and we're scared." And dude, we're just like, "Go to bed." You guys, yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, go to bed. And they come back in there, noticeably scared. So, me and Justin, being macho guys, like, hey, we'll come in there, tell you, make sure there's nothing going on like that. That stuff's not real. And, man. So we go in, and there's bunk beds in there. So we're all kind of spread out on the bunk beds. And I'm saying, if anything's here, knock once for no, two for yes. I remember saying that, 2 or 3 times. No, probably 3 or 4 times. And, just staring in the closet. I seem to think that I see an apparition in there, but I chalk it up to it's my mind playing tricks on me. I'm, their story. It's just my mind kind of playing into that.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I keep saying knock, 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 once for yes, or once for no, 2 for yes. All of a sudden, you just start hearing this like banging on the wall, like boom, 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 like over and over and over and over and over. And I look and I said, "Who did that?" And I was like, "You guys quit messing around." And everybody's like, "Swear it's not me. It's not me. It wasn't me." And I look, and I noticeably see a little girl with, ghostly apparition shoot across the floor, like, towards the bunk bed, under the bunk bed, and I'm on the bottom bunk. I feel something grab my big toe and the toe next to it and pull,
What?
and pull on it. And I jump up instantly. I run out the door, and I go straight to the front door, and I'm screaming the whole time, fuck this, fuck this, fuck. I said, get me out of here, Justin. And Justin had drove there. I said, Justin, let's go. Like, I gotta go. I'm frantic at this point.
Yeah.
And they all come running out, like, what's going on?
Hey everyone, this is Mary Bly with the Melted Broadcast. We hope you're enjoying the episode, The Deep Dive. Make sure to check us out on Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, and don't forget to hit that follow button on the X. And remember, stay melted.
And I just start, at that point, I'm terrified. And there's no, I'm 6'2", 220 pounds. I poured concrete my whole life.
Oh,
Like,
damn.
dude, I felt that. I saw that. I felt that. I ran straight to the door to get
Yeah.
the hell out of Dodge, man. So that happens. And Justin kind of calms me down. He's like, hey, everybody else is here. It's an S10. It's a 2-seater. It's like, we can't fit the whole family in this thing. We're going to have to ride it out. Oh, sorry. This is back in the flip phone days. This is actually a crucial part to the story.
Yeah. Okay.
So as the kids were coming in the living room, my brother was on the phone with his girlfriend, and this is when you couldn't like receive photos on the flip phones while you're speaking to somebody, and he gets this text message that says die 7 times.
What?
With 3 exclamation points after it. And it says die 7 times, and there were 7 people in the house. Like, I remember specifically counting how many people was in the house. And Justin's on the phone with this girl, and he's like, why did you just send me that? Because it came from her number. It came from the number that he was talking to her on. And it said die 7 times, 3 exclamation points after.
But like almost immediately after we moved into the house, things started happening. Like we would notice things just be missing or moving, or just random stuff. But for me, officially, it was me, my brother, and my sister. We all had a bedroom up in the attic. And I remember one night I just woke up. I don't even know why I woke up. I just woke up and I looked into the doorway, and there was this floating woman standing in the doorway. and I didn't know who it was, and I'm 6 or whatever, so I'm freaking out and I'm frozen and I can't scream, I can't do anything. I'm just panicking, and I'm just watching this woman just standing in the doorway, kind of like glowing or whatever. And then I just like blacked out, I guess, because I remember just waking up the next day in a lot of pain. It's a long story. But bad things happened to me that night. I'm not exactly sure why, but my parents witnessed it, and obviously I had to have the ambulance come look at me because things happened. I'm not sure where you want me to start with that after that. I have a long list of stuff that happened to us growing up.
No, just go for it.
Feel
whatever.
free to whatever you're comfortable talking about, man. Just let it all out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, growing up in that house, we weren't there for more than like a year, because the longer we lived there, things started to get progressively worse. So let's just go back to that night. I seen the figure. I don't know if I went back to sleep or if I blacked out. I just remember waking up in pain at the bottom of the stairs. And what my mom told me is she heard a scream, which I don't remember screaming. So she comes, and we're obviously up in the attic. So they come to the bottom of the stairs, and they look up at the stairs, and they see me. From what she tells me, I was hovering above the ground about 3 or 4 inches. Like my feet were off the ground, and she was panicking, like, what is happening? And then I just get tossed off these stairs. I don't hit a single step. They're all wooden stairs. I land apparently straight onto the floor, and I didn't break anything, but I was kind of bruised and bloody from obviously hitting the ground.
Yeah.
And when my mom told me what happened the next day, I was freaked out.
I mean, you were 6 years old, 5 or 6 years old, so you didn't. I mean, I'm sure that was very scary. So I'm guessing this ghost was not a friendly one.
No, it was eventually we found out that there was more than one, and yeah, it was definitely not friendly. Whatever was there didn't want us there. Later on, after everything went down, my father got in contact with the guy that gave us the home, and he knew about it apparently, but he failed to tell us. So that was kind of not cool.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, whatever it was there didn't want us there. Like, months and months went by, and things would just, you'd be in the living room, and then you hear a crash in the kitchen, and the plates would be all smashed all over the floor. My mom says that plenty of times when we were all at school, that she'd be home alone, and then a knife would be thrown at her, or plates would be thrown at her, or cups would be thrown at her. Yeah, that was a scary place.
Did you ever, now, I mean, obviously not then, but did you later on, as you were an adult, did you ever try to figure out what happened in that home? Like previously, like before, like the history, I guess, of the home, like if anybody had died there or anything like that?
And if you did, what is the history?
You know, I honestly have not. That is a really good idea, and I should have done that. A few years back, because no one in the family, we refused to go back to that area. We just, there were so many things that I haven't told you about that place yet, that it terrified us so bad, no one wanted to go back there. But one year I convinced them to, like, let's just take a trip just to see the house, see how it feels, see if anyone's living there, all that kind of stuff, just to put our minds, at ease.
Right.
And the thing is we drove hours to get back down there. We drove right up to the gate, and no one could get out of the car. Everyone just, like, we got frozen in just straight fear.
I picked up the phone, and I'd had countless conversations with my husband over the phone because of him being away so often. And so I picked up the phone, and I said, hello. And the voice at the other end said, hey, you. And that's how we always talk to each other on the phone. And I knew it was him, but I didn't want, how do you believe it's him? Like, what?
Yeah.
Right.
And I just said, who is this? And he said my full first and middle name. He goes, you know who this is, Natalie Marie. And then I just cried. I was like, what? I was like, are you all right? Like, what is happening? And so we just had this lovely conversation, and he soothed my concerns. He said, I want you to listen because you may not remember all of this. I am all right, and I love you. And I was like, I said, but now I'm alone again. Like, I'm alone. Like, I'm going to be all right. Am I going to be all right? And he's like, you're going to be all right. And he's like, do you trust me? And I'm like, I trust you. And he told me he was sorry that he was not going to be able to spend the rest of his life with me. He said, I'm so sorry we don't get to spend the rest of our lives together. And I was like, I know. I was like, and then I just cried. And it was just this beautiful gift. And as I was on the phone, I began to shiver profusely, like freezing cold.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter, we kept a blanket on the floor for her to play on. And I took that blanket and I covered myself with it. And I could still see my legs. They were just shaking. I was so cold. And I didn't know then, but I obviously know now when you hear people's other experiences with people that have passed on or ghosts, that you're freezing. And I was frigid. It was so cold. It was like the Arctic. I was freezing cold. So now I honestly wonder, maybe he was in the room with me and the phone was just the conduit, and that's how he was able to speak to me.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking right now too.
And that's probably,
right.
I did have, I had that situation before when my loved one passed, and I had, it was cold in the room, and I was thinking about him, and then all of a sudden I got so cold that I felt like he brushed up against my arm. So that could have been, but we remember our things differently. But when you were done with this phone call from Tom, what did you think afterwards?
My immediate thought is, because I've always had diaries ever since I was 7 or 8 years old. Mm-hmm. I ran down the hallway, literally ran, because I felt like somehow, I was not supposed to remember this conversation. It was supposed to happen just to soothe me and move me on. I wrote it all down, word for word. And then after I wrote the whole conversation down, then obviously the whole day just spilled out of me into my journal. I just wrote every single thing. But because I had always had a journal, my first instinct was, I have to get this down. I'm going to forget this or something's going to happen. So I noted it all down.
Yeah. Kudos to that, because I'm a very firm believer that, if you have dreams like that, and if you can remember them, or if something happened to you, while you're awake, to write them down, because that's exactly what I did, was write everything down. So
smart.
I'm glad you have those, because those are memories that you will always remember, because of the fact that you were wit enough to go and start writing these things down so that you would not forget every moment,
Right. Yeah. It's one of those things that it's my crutch, because I have a really good memory, but there are memories in those journals that I'll read and I'm like, I don't know that I would remember this had I not written it down.
Right. So good job on writing all that down, because now you do have those, and you do. I know your daughter now is older now. Does she know now about the phone call? Have y'all discussed anything about that?
She has known since she was old enough to understand. I told her when she was very little. I would say probably when she was about 2.5. Because she would always say, Daddy's in the sky, because I would say Daddy's in heaven, and we'd point up and Daddy's in heaven now. And she would always say Daddy's in the sky. And so then as soon as she was able to comprehend a little further than that, I told her, I said, well, Daddy called me one day after he died. Daddy called me and told me he loves us and he misses us and wishes he could be here. So she has always known. And then about 2 years after my husband's passing, I began to date.
And there's just so much more, and it's so much more fascinating, and it's so much more interesting and compelling than what we've been told. There was this crazy advanced super civilization, and they were Asian, and they traveled the whole world before everybody, thousands of years before everybody else. They knew how to harness the sky physics, and they knew how to create these magnificent, incredible 100 tons of stone megalithic structures with ease. And they were masters of stone from the largest, where they're carving whole mountainsides, to the tiniest little arrowheads. That was just their thing. They were totally in tune with nature and their environment. And they traveled the entire world, and they seeded the worlds with their people. We have that in the DNA evidence from India to the Americas. And we are still, it's still everywhere. It's still everywhere. This pattern, this template is the same template that's the Catholic altar. It's the same template that is on every single court and government seal, where it's two figures on either side and like a tree or something in the middle. That's the same. It's the same structural composition as ancient Mesopotamia art, with the tree of life and the two Sumerians on either side. The sky physics pattern lasted the entirety of hominid existence until about 1,000 years ago. It's not going to get erased from our culture that easily. We might be done with it, but it's not done with us. It's still everywhere. And I know this is a whole lot to take in, but this is the truth. And if you want, at BCE Supernova, check out my account. All I ask is that I don't ask for any money. I don't have any Patreon account or nothing like that. I ask that people believe their own eyes and keep an open mind. And if you really want to understand, go watch Symbols of an Alien Sky for free on YouTube. I think it's about a half hour long, the first part. There's 3 parts, but you only really need to watch the first part to understand they go off on the electric universe theory and how they suggest, like, the Grand Canyon, for example. There's a thing called it's called I want to say Fahrenheit burn, but it's not fair. There's a fractal burn that is done. If you ever take electricity, like a live wire, and you put it to wood, there will be a fractal burn in the wood from the electricity. Well, that looks exactly like our river system. And what they suggest and later is that all our river systems and the Grand Canyon itself are actually fractal burns from this Birkeland current striking the Earth, when that was how much devastation it caused. And that's how powerful it was. So, you can really go down the rabbit hole with the electric universe theory, stuff like that. But as far as ancient symbology goes and how that ties into the planetary alignment and the physics that it caused to be seen in the sky, you really only have to watch that first episode, which I highly recommend. It'll change your life. You'll never look at ancient symbology again. You'll look for Squatter Man and everything, and eventually 10 years later you end up being
movie night.
Right. Like I said, it's old, so it's a little slow, and it's not like in high def. So you've got to sort of like temper your expectations a little bit. But if you can get through it, your mind will be completely and utterly blown.
Good advice.
And then once you have a blown mind, then you come to @BCE Supernova on Twitter and see all the. I have taken the ball from them. David Talbot took the ball from Velikovsky. I took the ball from them and moved their work forward. So I discovered that Squatter Man isn't just a glyph; it's an entire template. It's like if you took the Mona Lisa and just made her a stick figure. That's essentially what Squatter Man is. But there's so much more to it. And the most dominant, easily recognizable symbol that I have found created from it is this Fu lion from China, from ancient China, and that's what I'm finding literally everywhere these days. That and the Dagon priests with the weird fish helmet thing. The best thing is that they're so strange. These images are so strange that it makes really great matchups because they can't be anything else. It's like, well, that could be a dog or it could be a lion. I'm not saying in between that. No, this is a guy with a fish on his head. It's kind of hard to mix that up with
reptilian hands, and that was me in a past life. So I'm looking at the hands, and that door appears, and I use one of my hands and I push that door open. Oh, this is really hard for me to speak about because, sorry about this. I'm getting a bit emotional.
No, you're good, man. Just take your time.
And I never knew any of this stuff before the regression, is that when I go through that door, the door that I'm always seeing in my nightmares, is I see the reptilians feeding. So they're feeding on every kind of life form. They're feeding on different animals, different beings. They're feeding on humans. They're feeding on children. And then I join in on the feeding. Sorry.
No,
It's okay.
you're good, man. Just take your time.
And now I'm feeding on the humans, and they're feeding viciously. They're voracious. They're just eating and eating and mindlessly eating. The next memory, I find myself as this reptilian being on his spaceship, or what I'm perceiving to be his spaceship. And he's standing with his arm against the spaceship and he's looking out at the stars. And I've drawn all these illustrations, which I can send to you as well. So that's the moment this reptilian being. So what's happening is that when this reptilian is consuming humans and consuming these other life forms, he starts developing empathy for the humans. He starts developing his soul. A soul, like these reptilians don't have a soul. Greys, reptilians don't have a soul. At least that's my perception of what's happening.
Okay.
So this reptilian starts developing that soul coming in. He must have potentially, I'm thinking he may have eaten the Lyran being that I was, right? And he started developing the soul. Now, the next memory that I get right away is that I'm lying on a gurney in my reptilian form. I can see my clawed feet. I can see what looks like I'm perceiving to be either a spacecraft or some kind of room where it's all gray ceilings. There's these purple lights running on either side, like little thin lights in a line, so it's like a straight line. And I feel like my body's being pushed on this gurney into a room. All of a sudden, I start feeling pressure on in my temples. And I start hyperventilating. I ask the regression therapist, Joe, I'm like, I don't know what's happening. She's like, look around, tell me what you see. At first it's black, but then I tilt my head backwards and I see a short gray, or what I perceive to be a short gray, working on my temples. So he had his little hands on the sides of my temples. And I can feel the physical pressure in my temples. Now, I don't know what's happening. And then I look around, I look past my feet, and all of a sudden I see what I perceive to be two tall grays on either side of my legs, right? I see a really tall reptilian, like a really muscular reptilian in the middle, laughing and smirking, the worst evil laugh and smile on his face, and he looks angry. And right behind them is a tall insect-like being who comes off as probably supervising this procedure, wearing like a purple cape, which then I found out was a mantid being. So now I'm panicking. I'm not sure what's going on. All of a sudden, my body starts convulsing, and I see a white light from my chest being ripped out. That's coming out of my chest and being put into what looks like a glass container. So this to me is looking like they were taking out that soul. They were doing like a soul transfer procedure.
Mm-hmm.
So they take out the soul, they put it in a glass container, and that's where that image ends. Then the rest of the regression, I'm asking, why did they do this to me? And my higher self tells me that what they've actually done is they've taken out the soul because Grace.
When I was 5 years old, that was the first paranormal experience that I had, and that led to this opening of all of these physical paranormal manifestations that began to occur. And they were witnessed by other people as well, and not only just my family, but by the kids I went to school with, by my friends. And then that led into the development of my psychic gift when I was about 6. And from there, I began to study everything that I could and experiment with everything that I could, because I wanted to find out, who's doing this, what's doing this, why the communication, what does this mean, how can we utilize it to make our lives better, and how can I make my gift more accurate. And in that pursuit, I studied everything I could get my hands on. And if it worked, I kept it. If it didn't, I got rid of it. It was like I wanted truth to be my guiding star. And if truth meant that I had to discard some of my own suppositions and my own pet peeves and my own belief system, if I had to get rid of those in the pursuit of the truth, that was fine. And there were many times that I did have to get rid of them.
Well, so there was something I read. I think it's a dedication in one of your books. The A Knock in the Attic, the Black Ghost. That's the one that you first saw, and that's the one that you accredited to opening this portal for you.
Yeah. The it was the most amazing experience. I was a little over 5 years old. I was sound asleep in my bed, and in the middle of the night, I woke up wide awake for no apparent reason, and I was totally awake. I didn't have any sleepiness, any grogginess, no drowsiness. And I laid there, and I thought, well, what in the world? Why am I all of a sudden wide awake? And I thought, well, maybe there was a noise outside that I heard subconsciously, and it woke me up or something. And I laid there and listened, and nothing. So down the hallway, my parents had left a nightlight on so I could see if I need to get up, go to the bathroom in the middle of the night or whatever. So I raised up on my elbows, just looked around my room. I thought, this is so strange. And I looked out my bedroom door down the hallway, and in the nightlight's glow, I could see this elderly black man peering around the doorway down the hall, looking at me in my bedroom. And I screamed bloody murder. And when I screamed, because, I'm 5.5 years old,
Right.
and I thought somebody's broken the house. And when I screamed, he walked around the doorway into the hall, started walking toward the bedroom, walking toward me. And he was every bit as solid as you or I. He wasn't transparent, wasn't translucent. He was completely, totally solid. And I knew he was elderly because he had close-cropped white hair and he had a white mustache. So I knew he had to be
Yeah.
old. And then he had on a red plaid flannel shirt and khaki pants, black belt, black shoes. I can remember what he wore.
Not the flannel.
And when he got close to me, I screamed bloody murder again, and then he began to disappear. He became translucent, became transparent, then he vanished. And my parents came running, made it into my bedroom by that time. And I said, there's somebody in this house, even though I'd just seen him disappear. I said, there's somebody in this house. And my mother was holding me, and I was crying and everything. She was like, no, you just had a bad dream. I said, you watched on TV. I said, no, there's somebody in this house. And my fright was so real and so convincing that my father actually walked through the house, checked all the doors and windows to make sure they were locked and secure. He looked under the bed, and he even looked in the closet. And, of course, nobody was there in the flesh. So they tried to get me to go back to sleep, and that was very difficult because I was like, then it dawned on me, I've just seen my first ghost. And I'm like, is this guy going to come back? Is he going to want to appear again? And maybe he's going to want to talk to me? Is he going to ask me to do something I'm going to consider scary or weird or whatever?
Yeah.
And it was like, it was real hard going to sleep for a number of weeks after that. And I spent, a lot of time looking over my shoulder. But it finally dawned on me. It was an epiphany, and I couldn't articulate it being that young. But intuitively, I understood that the old black ghost had come to open up the portal to these physical paranormal manifestations that would begin to occur. And then I somehow intuitively understood that those were going to be very important in my life and somehow very important in other people's lives, and they were not to be feared. And so I've never again been scared by anything. I've been startled, but I've never been scared again in my entire life of anything supernatural. So that was how that all started.
You haven't seen him, right? Since then?
Anything that was scary or monstrous, and it was used to terrorize these local wildlings, you could call them, wherever they went. They were like Rome. They brought civilization, because that's what Oannes and Dagon, the mythology, there's myths all over the world of these Dagon fish priests coming to your corner of the woods after the cataclysm and restarting civilization, teaching everybody how to do stuff. Well, they did, but just like Rome, they did so by saying, okay, it's going to cost you your freedom, your land, and, all your resources. We're going to ship back to Rome, but we are going to make this civilization here. It's not going to be for you. It's going to be for us. You're going to be our slaves and stuff. But that's how they brought civilization everywhere. This was not a friendly migration of teaching the world how to do stuff. And it lasted for tens of thousands of years, what I'm finding, until the cataclysm, until the planetary alignment disbanded. There was more than one cataclysm. There was more than one great flood. But just as the Bible says, the flood washed away the wicked. It really did. It washed away all these devil-worshipping, cannibal, pedophile Atlanteans who had used their advanced technology to sort of conquer the world. They put up their megaliths everywhere. And I started following all of these sort of rock hounds and weird rock Facebook groups and stuff. And I started coming across like I said, the thing about the Dagon fish priests is they're very specific. It's a very specific shape because they're wearing such an odd costume. Not too many people, in history wore fish head costumes, with like the fish mouth pointing up. So, because it's such a distinct shape, I've been able to match it to, and this is going to sound crazy, but again, I invite people to go on my Twitter, BCE Supernova, and see for yourself.
Check it out.
I'm finding what are called effigies or small statues, which you find in Mesopotamia. So there's proof of concept, parallel, precedent. We know these things were made. We know these things existed. We just never knew they were in America. I'm finding that a lot of what people mistake as arrowheads are actually ancient art, ancient BCE, super ancient Dragon stuff. I call them the Dragon, which sounds like dragon because they put the dragon on everything, but they have the Dagon, the Dogon, the Dogu, and there's a few other variations as well. By the way, the Dogon tribe in Africa is still making the costumes today that look very similar to the ones that look that we see in museums that are supposed to be from Mesopotamia, 5000 BC. The tradition is still alive in where it started in Africa there. The cataclysm comes and wipes everything out, and I think then as a sort of the world begins anew because the Bronze Age collapsed. All of the powers, the superpowers that the Dagon were, like Egypt, the Ugaritic, the Anatolians in Turkey, all the major powers around the Mediterranean, the ancient Greeks, they all collapsed at the same time. And the geological survey tells us that there were massive floods at this time, earthquakes, and they don't know what it was. And I think that's one of the major cataclysms. I think that's about 1300 BCE. It was the collapse of the Bronze Age. So, it's as a reaction to the world being destroyed under the watch of these awful people. I think there was a restart of the movement, and it gave us what we know of as the ascetics today. And the ascetics are the holy men who won't eat anything and stuff like you see in India. And in India, they carry a little water pail called a kamandalu. You can Google that. It's called kamandalu. And if you look at ancient art of these Dagon priests, they're carrying the same little, looks like a handbag.
Yeah,
but
it's a little bag.
Actually a
nightmare I have. But then the torture stuff, is horrendous. It's just horrendous, and they record everything. And when I say horrendous, I mean one of the real big things that, of course, they do to the kids is they chain them to the floor in a big room, spread apart, and they bring in the Belgian Malinois, the German Shepherds, and they will actually let one of these dogs eat one of these children. I mean, maybe not every time, but you got a whole bunch of children chained in a room, and you're torturing them. You're walking back and forth with these dogs, and
scaring the shit out of these kids. And eventually one of the dogs will eat one of them, and they all have to watch this. And that's how they keep them from saying anything, because they know that can happen at any time.
And is that also for the purpose of the adrenochrome?
Well, it's all, of course it is.
Okay.
The adrenochrome, of course, people think when you're hyped up on adrenaline, you're going to produce all this adrenaline and they're going to collect it in the form of adrenochrome. But what's really going on, what's really the most primary purpose for this is that humans are psychic beings. We have, there's metaphysics is coming in now. And what they're really collecting, which is even more important, is a thing called loosh, which is negative human, emotional, psychic energy. Okay. So when these kids are terrified and they're creating this adrenaline, they're also sending out all these energies, signals and crap, energetic. Their little auras are spewing terror and whatever. And this is collected. This is collected by the AI. And the AI is used because, and this is what they call the black goo. It's the same thing. And basically it goes between the 4D and the 3D and collects the stuff from the 3D and transfers it to the 4D. And we all have this done. We have one of these little black goo tentacles attached to us. And the idea is to just try not to feed it.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of feeding it. I'm depressed all the time, but and angry. But that's how it feeds. They feed on this stuff. And we're like cattle. And this loosh is extremely valuable, and they ship it all over the universe, the galaxy, because these 4D entities, the bad guys, the service to self types, they need to have this to consume. It's part of their nutrition. It's like a half of their nutrition comes from this. Okay. Yeah, they also get nutrition from blood, which is a physical biological product. But they also have a spiritual energy requirement, which is about 50%, and that's where this loosh comes in. So people like Rambo, people like the Jedi, the people that I recruit, the people that work for me and under Rambo that run amok in the 4D, that's one of the things we do. We try to disrupt this loosh collection, and we divert it from wherever it's going back to source. We can only do so much. We don't kill physical people. We're not doing, if we wrestle not against flesh and blood and all that. We're dealing with 4D entities. So like, for instance, if there's Draco, we're killing Draco, or there's Greys, or there's Anunnaki. You're killing a lot of Draco, I can tell you that. And I really don't know, because I often wonder how many humans get in the way, like regular 3D humans.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure, but I think that one of the biggest things that they do when they abduct these children is they're looking for people with special capabilities. They're looking for children that have psychic skills, and so maybe like 1% or less of all these children they abduct are going to have some kind of skill. Probably a lot less, but every once in a while they'll find a little gem and they'll ship that person off to Hogwarts, where they train them to be wizards and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's really where it's at, you see, because when it comes down to it, this whole battle for the world, battle for the universe, Star Wars type thing, it's all happening in the astral. Okay. It's one big psychic war going on. And I know there's a lot of people out there on the internet and such that talk about being psychic warriors and doing battle against, demons every night. And I'm sure there are. I call those people freelancers. And I used to collect freelancers. I mean, I've been collecting psychics for a long time, probably at least 20 years. But lately, and I have a lot of really big military dudes too. I got a colonel, I don't know, it's got like multiple stars, but I got a colonel working for me. A lot of these people are trained by, the military, but usually once.
People say that I'm one of the greats, I'm the one that you love to hate. Shake them up like a quake, pop your feelings and turn and dispose them like haters I throw away. I'm forever blessed, got the spirit that's wholly controlling me, I ain't gotta coordinate. I just sit back and buckle my belt and I'm ready to blast in the stars of my destination. Melted, broadcast, open vision. Melted, broadcast, open vision. Melted, broadcast. broadcast, open vision. Melting broadcast, open vision.